and its economic and social safety nets continued into the Clinton era. Yet while the War on Terror was not the first time an administration would sidestep the law and the Constitution, such departures from law gained terrifying momentum after the attacks of 9/11. By 2008, the policies of the War on Terror had taken an immense toll. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq together cost almost 500,000 lives. The creation of an indefinite detention regime at Guantanamo and the use of torture to extract information from high-value detainees at CIA black sites had taken the country down a path that alarmed defenders of the rule of law and those once dependent on the United States as an ally in the struggle for human rights worldwide. American citizens' trust in government had been fractured due to revelations of surveillance policies and the expansive use of law enforcement powers in investigations that had initially been launched against suspected terrorists, but over time targeted many others. When Barack Obama was elected president in 2008, optimism abounded over the opportunities to reverse course on post-9/11 policies. Obama's election heralded a change in the direction and tone of the country and a bitter setback for the interests that had flourished through the Bush years. Obama's anti-Iraq war campaign rhetoric and his opposition to the legal and policy exceptions made in the name of that war gave hope to critics of the War on Terror. He came into office with promises to close the detention facility at Guantanamo Bay, to diminish the dependence on secrecy and institute policies that emboldened transparency, to restore the clear prohibition on torture, and to generally move the country in a direction that adhered to constitutional principles and protections. Yet making progress proved harder than Obama had anticipated. As he would write over a decade later in his memoir, A Promised Land, he at times underestimated the virulence of the political opposition he would encounter. Closing Guantanamo eluded his efforts as he made the calculation that passing the Affordable Care Act took precedence over the controversy closing Guantanamo was certain to unleash. His attempts to end the military presence in Iraq and Afghanistan, already known as the Forever War, were unsuccessful. Moreover, it seems, having been persuaded by some of the security versus liberty arguments that those inside his own cabinet embraced, he even expanded parts of the War on Terror arsenal, most notably the use of drone strikes with much greater frequency and against an expanding number of countries. By 2016, despite the promises of the Obama administration to wrench back some of the Bush-era deviations from the jaws of democracy's detractors, the country was still living in the thrall of the institutional and cultural changes that 9/11 and the 107th Congress had wrought. One reason was that beneath these more overt policy choices of the post-9/11 era, including the decision to go to war in Iraq and the weakening of civil liberties in the name of national security, lay a less visible but equally destructive set of practices. These less visible means were what I call the subtle tools of the War on Terror, which bestowed powers without immediately calling attention to themselves. More crushingly than any one policy or piece of legislation, the subtle tools forged out of the wreckage of 9/11 have acted as a corrosive blanket, smothering the good out of a democracy in turmoil. The first of the subtle tools was the degradation of language, the starting point for political dishonesty and power-mongering, and the platform upon which undemocratic and unlawful policies have been fashioned. After 9/11, language that was fuzzy, imprecise, and confounding obtained a secure foothold in government discourse. Over time, that linguistic imprecision enabled another subtle tool, confusion and imprecision in the roles and responsibilities of the institutions of government, which I term bureaucratic porousness. The third subtle tool, by definition hard to detect, was secrecy and the withholding of facts. The fourth and final tool, one that went hand in hand with devalued language and obfuscatory truth, was the abandonment of legal and procedural norms for lawmaking, oversight, judicial review, transparency, and many other elements of governance. With these subtle tools in hand, imprecision and vagueness in language, secrecy and the hiding of facts, bureaucratic porousness and abandonment of norms,